Hey everyone, Johnny here. Tonight I'm gonna be working on a fake board game scene. Just kind of got the idea to put together a little scene that was, inspired by my love of board games and all that kind of thing. So I'm gonna jump into it, and feel free to comment in the comments uh, if you got any questions, or if there's any trouble with this with the stream. If you're having trouble hearing, if the music's too loud, whatever, uh, just uh, just let me know. If it gets choppy or anything as well, let me know. I've been having some issues with um, some encoding and things, so please make sure to let me know if the stream gets wonky on you, um, and we'll go from there. All right, well, jumping into it, first thing we're going to need to do is have some board game pieces. So, one of my, of course, one of my favorites is like tile laying games, like a Catan, or um, the Zombies game, or really any of those, Carcassonne, those sorts of games. If you've got a favorite game that you like playing, go ahead and mention it in the chat. That's cool. Um, so anyway, I want to come up with some tiles that we'll use um, for our basic setup. So, in the spirit of Catan, we'll go ahead and add some hexagon tiles to start with. So I'll add a circle, drop it down to 6 vertices here, and go ahead and fill that face in. Now let me... Oh, might help if I showed my screen. Let's try that. Maybe that's a little better. you know, it's the little things. So, there we go. All right. So anyhow, got our hexagon here. Now we want to keep this as easy to work with as possible. So first of all, let's go ahead and scale this down to the right size. These ones here, let's see, I did a little bit of measuring, so it looks like we've got along the X, do 79 millimeters, and along the Y we've got 92 millimeters. Okay, so there we go. That's our basic shape for our tile. Now, obviously we've got just a flat plane here, so we're going to need to give it some thickness. So to do that, I'm going to go ahead and add a solidify modifier. And one thing you do want to do is put in... oh, here, let me turn on my keystrokes. That might be nice too. Sorry. Okay, here we go. Go ahead and I'm going to apply scale on that. Always a good idea when you're working in Blender to apply your scale, especially if you're going to start using modifiers, because modifiers use the scale of the object, so they can get distorted if you don't have your scale applied. Anyhow, so our thickness, our overall thickness, we're just gonna put this at 1.5 millimeters thick for the cardboard that this stuff is printed on. So there we go. Got that. Now, of course, these edges can't be perfect like this, so we'll go ahead and add a bevel modifier as well. And we'll put just a 0.25 millimeter bevel. Maybe that's hold on. I adjusted the wrong modifier. There we go. Our bevel modifier will do 0.25 millimeters, just to round off the edges there. And that looks pretty decent. Okay, so now if I go ahead and I start duplicating this, at least we'll have a good shape to work with. I'm going to add another tile. Let's go ahead and we'll just add a square as well. I'm going to bring this in, and we'll make it so it can line up with these edges like this. Apply scale on that. And then I want to add the same modifiers to this one. So it's super easy to do that. I just click on this one, click on this one. I'll do a Control L to the link transfer data menu, and then copy modifiers. So when you do that, it copies the modifier from the active selection, which is the brighter colored selection, to the other selected items. So doing that again, Control L, copy modifiers, boom. All right. So that's two shapes, and I think that's good for now. If we want to add more later, we can if we've got time. Now we'll let's see. We need some. We've got our board pieces here. We'll just move those up a little. There we go. All right. So now let's get some game pieces going here. We'll do. Oh, let's see here. We'll do some little octagonal cylinders, kind of like some resource cylinders that a lot of games have. So I'll go ahead and add a cylinder. I'll set the vertices to 8, so we get little octagons. And you'll see why I'm choosing octagons, because they won't roll as much, because we're going to do a physics, a rigid body simulation on them, so we can automatically generate a nice looking pile that looks nice and random, but also somewhat realistic. Because in the end, we do want this to be as realistic as possible. You know, we're going for more of a photorealistic render at the end of this one. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and shrink this down. Now these little bins, we want them to be let's see here. We want them to be about 15 or so millimeters across and about 20 millimeters tall. Well, 20 might be a little high. 15 by 15? Yeah, that seems a little big. Maybe, just kind of looking at my notes here real quick. Sure. Yeah, why not? We'll go with that. See how it looks by the time we're done. All right. Then we'll go ahead and add a bevel modifier to this one as well. Real small, 0.25, maybe a 0.5 millimeter bevel. We won't want to apply scale. And yeah, that might be too big. Let's go 0.25. There we go. Okay. So that looks good. And now we want some kind of tokens as well on this. So we'll do some little discs. as well. And these ones we will go let's make them about, yeah, that's about 12 millimeters across, and we'll make them 1.5 millimeters tall. Great. So now we'll just go ahead and fill in these faces here. And that's good. All right. Shade that smooth and set it to auto smooth. We'll go ahead and add a bevel. Apply scale, and then we'll add a bevel modifier to that, 0.25 millimeters. Yeah, maybe that's a bit too much. Let's do 0.1 millimeters. Yeah, just want that slight edge on there, just enough to give it some, just enough to give it some pop along the edge. All right. So we've got our tiles that we're gonna lay down. We've got a couple of pieces. If we need some more pieces later, we can always add some more stuff in. Let's go ahead and look at some textures. We'll do these ones first because these ones are going to be simpler. All right. So there's a couple ways, couple things we can do here. For these little resource bins, we want those to be, we really just want those to be some random colors. So what we'll do here is there's a node under input called object info, and this has a nice little setting on it called random. And so what that does is every time you have an object with this material, it generates a random number between 0 and 1. You can actually just plug that, say, into the base color, and then if I duplicate this a bunch of times, I start getting random colors on those, which is nice. Now, because this is a random number between 0 and 1, when we put a value, like just a regular number, into a color, it sets the RGB for that color all the same. And so when you have RGB all the same color, it's just a grayscale. When it's 0, it becomes 000, which is black. When it's 1, it becomes 111, which is white. Which is not what we want. We want some different primary colors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to some, like, an indexed color. And I'm going to do that using a converter color ramp node. When you add a color ramp node just by default, you get this gradient here. And so pretty much it's just a linear 0 to 1. It really doesn't change. If 0 comes in, 0 goes out. If 1 comes in, 1 goes out. What we can do is we can change this to constant. And then when we pull this over, now if from 0 to whatever value this is set at, so if this is set at 0.5, say, from 0 to 0.5, you get this color. 0.5 to 1, you get this color. So now if I were to duplicate these, eventually they would kind of even out to random, half black, half white. So let's go ahead and set these colors. So this, I'm going to change this, and we'll just go ahead and make blue. And then this one we will go ahead and make sure, pink. And then we're going to move this over, add in another color stop. We'll move this color stop to 0.33. Move this color stop to 0.66. And we'll change this one to green. So, so now, give me just a second here. All right. Sorry for that interruption. All right, cool. So now back to this. So we've got now 3 indexed colors, and our random number will pick somewhere within these 3. And so now as we generate out these little bins here, they're going to get generated with the colors that we want, but random. You know, if we were trying to like mock up a real game and we needed exactly 10 blue ones and 10 green ones and 10 pink ones, we wouldn't want to do this method. But I'm going to want to scatter these, and for that, I don't want to individually color each of these. So, you know, oh, is there a seed value for the random? That's a good question. I think... I don't know that there is necessarily a seed value. The seed value might be based... You know, I don't know that there is a seed value available, at least on this particular setting. I would have to do some digging on that. That's a really good question. And you know, if you're watching this and you don't know what a seed value is, basically the random number generator is going to generate, it's not a true random number generator. It's going to calculate the same random number sequence like every time you go to generate these numbers, so they're reliable. So that means if I were to play this back as an animation, these aren't going to flicker from color to color to color to color because it's, you know, just randomly giving them a thing. It's going to stay the same because that's there. The problem though is if you were to duplicate that set and then run the same random number generation, you would get the same values for the same items. If you go back and watch my video on the stack of paper geometry nodes, there's that thing. If you duplicate that geometry node tree and have the exact same settings, you get the exact same pile, and the randomness is exactly the same because that seed value starts at the same number. But in that case, you can change the seed number, and so the randomness for each pile looks different. So thanks, Andrew, for that question. Definitely. All right. Now this one, going back here. All right, so our color here, we want these, we're gonna want these to be a little rougher, maybe not so much specular. I think that's fine. Maybe a little bit of clear coat. I'm gonna go ahead and save this file for now, just cause. Whoa, hey, wrong button. Don't mind me. All right. I'm just having a fun time here. All right. Save game. All right, cool. Just in case I crash, I am using the Blender 3.0 alpha, so there is a chance that I will have some crashes, and we'll deal with that when they come. So, save often. All right, so back to our materials here. I'm going to go ahead and delete these extra ones I've got for now. Now this one, we're going to go ahead and add new, and we're going to want these ones to be shiny and specular, and I think we're going to call this other one, we'll call this resource tubs. Sure. This will be our white chip. And then this one will be our black chip. Cool, and those are kind of shiny. All right, so now we want to look at our tiles. I was kind of putting together an idea for this earlier, because what I wanted to do was get some icons on these tiles, and I didn't want to like use anybody's intellectual property and all that. So I just kind of thought, well, let me come up with some symbols that, you know, we can put on these. So I was just thinking like electrical engineering symbols. It's a fake game. Hey, maybe you can come up with a cool game using this idea. I don't know. I'm not a game designer. However, I came up with an idea based on some thoughts that some people had given me on creating some different textures for different objects based off of one material. So what I have, and I'm going to bring it up here. Give me a second. Where did I put it? If you know where I put it, let me know. Did I put it on my desktop? I did put it on my desktop. Cool. Okay. So what I've got here are some icons that I put together in Inkscape, and I laid them out on this grid, so they're in like 50 by 50 squares. So this is 200 pixels across and 200 pixels or 100 pixels tall. And what I want to do is I want to place each of these onto the tiles. And I want them to be random, just like the colors of the bins, using one material. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to UV unwrap the tiles, and we'll place them over one of these objects. But then we can use the vector mapping node to move that UV map across and up and down on this UV map. So let me start putting that together, and it might make more sense as I do it. All right, so I'm going to add a texture here, and I'll add in our icons, and I'll go into UV editing, the UV editing space. I'll unwrap this and I'll project from view, so I get this shape exactly as I see it in the view. I'm going to grab it and I'm just going to move it over here and try to line it up. Now this particular icon I had go the exact distance side to side on the 50 pixels. So put it right there. So that's good. Now go into seed value for random. It seems it can be faked by feeding the random input from the object input into the white noise. Oh, yeah, that would make sense. You know, it's probably, the seed is probably based on the object, like the object ID, is my guess. So, and since every object is going to be unique, then your seed's going to be different for everyone. And so you're not really getting a sequence that way. But yeah, plugging that into the white noise and then using that seed texture, that would be that. Yeah, it's a good idea. I like that. So many ways you can do things. Okay. So now I've got this UV unwrapped, and what I'm going to do is, since I've got this based on the alpha channel here, I'm going to go ahead and add in a color mix RGB node here, and then use the factor as from the alpha channel, and then I'll just set there we go. Color 1, we'll have the backs of these tiles be orange. That looks great. And then the icon be black. So now, here's where the fun starts. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this one and just bring it over here. Now, the location in this mapping, turns out that the X and Y of this location correspond to like the percentage of the way across this image. So 0 puts you at 0 here. 0.25 puts you, oh wait, you can't see because my camera is in the wrong spot. There we go. 0.25 is like right here, then 0.5 is in the middle, 0.75 is here, and 1 is here. And of course, since our image is set to repeat, it just keeps going on and on and on. So if I change this X to 0.25, of course nothing happened. What did I do wrong? Texture. Oh, does it need to be? Oh, hold on. There we go. You got to drop it into a combine XYZ here first. I don't know why. That's doing some kind of conversion, but that's okay. So when this is 0.25, now you notice I'm getting this icon because the X is here and the Y is 0. So the Y is up here at the top. So 0, 0 is here. 2.5 or 0.250 is here. And so if I want this icon, I want to be at halfway down and 0.25 across. So if I change the Y here to 0.5, I get the little speaker icon. So here's than what I thought was if I go ahead and come up with the object info. So the random is giving me from 0 to 1. If I do this, it's not good because it's giving me any value across here. And what I want is 0.25, 0, or 0, 0.25, so on. So if I go ahead and since I've got 4 items, if I multiply my random by 4, and you might think there's an easier way to do this, and that's fine. I'm sure there is. So if I say multiply this by 4, now my random value goes from 0 to 4, but it does have all the in-between steps. What I can do is I can then take this and take that 0 to 4 and do a round floor. So now 0 to 1 all becomes 0, or 0 to 0.99999 becomes 0. 1 to 1.9999 becomes 1, etc., etc. Now, taking that one more step, if I take this and I divide that again by 4, those become 0.25, or 0, 0.25, 0.5, and 1, or 0.75, and 1. And 1, since it wraps, is the same as 0. So now my x, and change my y back to 0. There we go. So if I duplicate enough of these, I should get all 4 of those top rows. Now, sorry about that. Now I want to do the same thing with the y. You're not too late, and you can always go back and watch the first little bit if you like. But thanks for showing up. Thanks for showing up. And everybody who is showing up, I appreciate it. And the channel's been growing a lot lately. I've just been blown away that I'm pushing 1,300 subscribers. I really appreciate the support everyone's given me. So just wanted to get that out there. So we want to do the same thing for the y value. But since there's 2 instead of 4, all we got to do is change these from 4 to 2. So I'm going to duplicate these 3, plug this random value here, change this to 2, change this to 2, and plug this into the y. Now I should get all 8 symbols as I duplicate these randomly. So that's pretty cool. These squares, I mean, I could do the same thing with the squares if I wanted to. If I went ahead and projected this from view, did the same sort of deal. And then let's see, what material is this? I'm really bad at naming my materials. I don't know if any of you suffer from that same condition, but naming my stuff is, I got to get better at that. So this is the tile texture. So if I gave the tile texture to this one, it works exactly the same because I'm using the same kind of that space, that repeatable space. You could do that. You could do that here. So again, as I duplicate these out, I get randomly chosen those tiles. Cool. All right. So from here, now that we've got some pieces, we've got our little resources here, we've got some tiles with some symbols on them. We'll make the tiles a little more. If I found the channel, back to basic. Well, thanks for watching, Andrew. I appreciate the support. Like I said, because that, you know, I've been a Blender user for way too long. I actually started using Blender back before it went open source. So that was like late 90s, 2000-ish, somewhere in there. It was like Blender 1.97 maybe. So I've been around a long time. I always tell myself I should be a lot better at this than I actually am for as long as I've used this program. But I finally wanted to start giving back. I did some development myself back in 2004, 2005 era. Actually got my name on the Elephant's Dream open movie, the first open movie. My name is in the credits as in software development. So I had committed some code during that time period, which was really cool. It's the only reason I have an IMDb page is for that movie, which is fun. I like that. But yeah, I'm glad that, you know, I'm able to reach out to folks who are experienced users, but also people who are new, and I'm, you know, hopefully able to help somebody out somewhere along the line. I do want to do one other thing on these tiles. A lot of times if you're looking at a board game, the tiles are cut out of cardboard. So the top might have like a slick image on them, but the side is like a rough cut paper or rough cut cardboard. So we want a different material on the side of these. So I'm going to jump over to my material and I'll add a texture here, and we'll call this one tile side. Sounds good. And maybe a brownish. No, maybe a light beige-ish kind of color. We want this to be pretty rough with no specular. Now, what we can do for these, since we used the solidify modifier, materials, you can change the side material on these. So the material offset, if you look at the bottom now, the bottom is that color, and the rim, which is the side, is that color as well. So that's kind of cool. And then on this one, I will do the same thing. On the solidify materials, I'll change that 1 and 1. And I need to add that second material here as well. Tile side. Cool. All right, so now let's add our table. We want to be able to put these. somewhere. So we'll add a cube. And we'll bring up the end panel. And since we're doing this pretty much to scale, we will go ahead and try to do this to scale. We'll say it's an 8-foot table. And I apologize as someone who has grown up in the States and was born and raised here. Imperial measurements are how I think. I've been trying really hard to do more things in metric because it translates to Blender so much easier. You know, I've been using my little calipers on things, but when it comes to big measurements, I can't, like, I have a hard time thinking in meters. They just don't click in my head like feet do. So we're just going to say this is an 8-foot table, and we're going to say it is 3.5 feet wide, and the tabletop is going to be 1.5 inches. If you didn't know you can do that in these dimensions, if you do think in Imperial like I do, these are one of the areas where you can go ahead and you can stick in an Imperial measurement and use like a single quote for feet and double quote for inches, and that will take those. I think it might actually take yards. 3 yard. Okay, apparently 4. Yeah. So if you do YD, it'll do yards. Miles. Hey, it'll do miles too. So that's a long table, 4 miles long. All right, we'll take that back. No, not 4 feet. We want 8 feet. There we go. All right, so now we've got our 8 by 3.5 table, 1.5 inches thick. Might even be a little too thick. We'll do 0.25 inches thick. That right there. And as always, apply scale. All right. So we got our tabletops. Do the units have a standard conversion when exporting for 3D printing? Yeah, some of that has to do with your for 3D printing. Again, most 3D printers work better in metric, or are designed to work in metric. So if you're gonna get into 3D printing, which I would totally suggest doing, I got a Creality CR10, good grief, several years ago, and I just love the thing. It's so much fun. Just little things that I've been able to print, you know, from, you know, I have my little Stream Deck here, and it's, the original Stream Deck is really flat, and I wanted a stand for it, so I just designed one up in Blender and printed it out, to, you know, something silly like the little Google dinosaur. Anyhow, but yeah, so when you go to export to STL, you can set and say to use the units that you have, or you can have like a multiplier. So like, oh, this needs to be 10 times bigger or 10 times smaller than my file indicates. And then when you bring it into your slicer, you can always scale it much like you would in Blender. So you can say like, oh, it's 1,000 times bigger, or 10% of the original size, or something like that. So yeah. But if you're going to do anything in 3D printing, I would suggest stick with metric and export to metric. And then if you're using Cura Slicer, just stick with metric, and you'll be a whole lot happier. All right. back to our table here. We want to put a texture on top of this. I will put in my plug here for cc0textures.com is a great place for PBR textures. And so we're just going to categories here, and we will go to, let's see here, wood. And let's find a nice tabletop material. Ooh, I like that one. We'll do that one. Wood, number 27. And of course, you can go nutso with your choices of resolution. Of course, you're going to get, uncompressed, PNG files. You're going to get better quality out of those. But of course, much bigger files, and when you go to render, it's going to take up more memory and more video memory and all that kind of stuff. So just be cautious of that. I'm just gonna grab the 4K JPEG. I'll give that a download. On my incredible internet speed here. All right. Maybe I should have just gotten the 2K for tonight, but oh well, that's all right. We're already halfway there. Jump back over to Blender while that's working. And let's go ahead and make a pile of, well, let's lay out some tiles, and then we'll lay out a pile of chips. So, because we already made these so they'd be randomized, I'm just going to go ahead and, well, first, we're going to call this tile, hex tile, and I'm going to move hex tile to its own collection. Hex tiles, because we're going to create a bunch of them. We want them to all be in the same folder so that we're not having to fight with lots and lots of objects later on. So I'm just going to start duplicating these, our imaginary game here. Let's see, we'll move plane. This is a square tile. And we'll move square tile to its own collection. Cool. All right. So in our fake game here, you place these tiles down, and maybe you got to put one like this, and we don't want to be too precise, because if any of you have played any tile laying games, you know that the tiles are never precisely laid out on the table. They are usually a mess by the end of the game. So we don't want ours to be too terribly tidy. This one, we'll put this here. I want those to overlap and maybe rotate it a little. Okay. I would imagine that these tiles mean something to the game. Like I said, I wish I was a game designer. I actually was accepted into a game design program several years ago, and just life circumstances kind of made it so that it just wasn't going to happen. And It's kind of sad because I think I really would have enjoyed it. But all right, that looks decent enough for now. Kind of neat. We will take, let's see, so this is our resource cylinder, and we're going to move that to a new collection. Resources. Okay. And we'll maybe put a few of these over here. So, and we'll put a few of them over here for this person. Spread them out a little bit. I guess we could. If you didn't know that you could use proportional editing on objects, you can. So you can kind of manipulate this whole pile at the same time. There we go. Cool. All right. All right, now let's see. Okay, our wood finally got done, so we're going to extract that. Give our table a name. Give it a new texture. And I'm going to use the Node Wrangler PBR setup. So we click on the principled BSDF for the table and do a Control-Shift-T. Control-Shift-T. That'll take me to a search there. There's the file. I'll go ahead and grab all 4 of those and do principled texture setup. And that brings that whole thing in for us just like that. Just like magic. Sets everything we need for our table. I'm going to put this in rendered mode. Please tell me really quickly if my audio starts to go bad once I go into rendered mode. I was noticing when I was recording the other day that as soon as I hit rendered mode, I don't know if it just started fighting with my CPU too much or what. Let me check my preferences just to make sure. Okay. All right, here we go. Okay, let's see here. And we'll go ahead and we'll just add a world texture here. Something nice. Got some robes, indoor. HDRI Haven is a great place for HDRI Haven is a great place for HDRI background images, also 100% free and licensed as CC0. Check them out, support them. They're super cool. And I've got, as you can see, I've downloaded several of theirs. I'm going to use this one here. It looks pretty good. All right. Yeah. So that's starting to look good. All right, so now that we've got a table texture and we've got a table object, let's go ahead and make our piles of the little chips that we had. So the first thing I'm going to want to do is gravy tips. Ah, yeah, thank you. It's a cool it's a cool trick. Pushing around your UV map based on that location. And I mean, you can also do rotation. If you wanted to randomize the rotation, you could multiply it. You probably need to do it in radians. I think there's a radians to degrees map if or mapping node if you need to do that too. But yeah, you could do rotation, you can do location, and you could do scale. That wouldn't be quite as helpful in this setup. I think just rotation and location would be helpful for this particular setup. So on our table, I'm going to go ahead and go over to the physics tab here. I'll give the table a rigid body and set it to passive because the table's not going anywhere. Then, let's see, this is going to be our white chip. And then this one is the black chip. We'll move the white chip to the white chips collection, and we'll move black chip to the black chips collection. Okay. Again, you know, when you're going to duplicate things a bunch, get them into a collection so that you don't end up with just your main collection having like 500 objects. You'll regret it later. I'm going to move the black one over here. All right, so before we start to duplicate this object, I'm going to go ahead and set up its rigid body constraints. So it's going to be active. We'll just, I don't know, one gram maybe. I don't know. And the shape we can leave as convex hull because it doesn't have any, like it doesn't have any holes. It doesn't have any convex. It doesn't have any like divots in it. So this convex hull is fine. The table we could actually change to a box because it is. So now if I jump into side view mode here, take this up. All right. Table's got a collision. This has got a collision, or is active. Boom. Super easy. Now, let's go ahead and duplicate this a few times. So we'll do this. Boom. Take those. Duplicate them side to side a little bit. Take all of those. Duplicate them this way. Okay. Now, if I press Shift Space to run the animation, get that. Which, I mean, for as quick and easy as that goes, I love that. Like, I can sit and play with like just setting up a bunch of things and just having them fall down. I could play with that all night. Like, it's just super fun. So anyway, so we got those tiles. Go back to the first frame, grab my black tile, and just kind of do the same thing with it. Add its rigid body, set it to 1 gram. Convex hull is fine. If you want them to pile up a little more, you can, well, for one, you can change the surface response of the table and add more friction. The things won't slide around as much. And then on these objects as well, you can add more friction. Now you're like, well, you just created, how many are there? 76. Really? Wow. Created a lot of these puppies. Yeah, I just created 75 of these chips. And you know, you're not going to want to go to each one and change the settings on it. What you can do, however, if you've got multiple items selected that are the same, that have the same setting available, so all of these have a rigid body on them, that means I can go to the friction, and if I hold down the Alt key, well, I gotta have one as the active selection. If I hold down the Alt key and then click on one of these fields and then let go, that's going to set that for all of them. So these are all now set to 0.896. So that works across Blender. If you've got multiple items selected and they all have the same setting available as the actively selected object, and you hit Alt when you go to click in the field to change that setting, you'll change all of them. So it's a time saver and a lifesaver sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to jump back in here, and we're going to duplicate this black token as well. All right. Okay, so now we've got a couple piles of tokens. We've got these. And I think what we would need to do now is maybe gonna take one of these and remove its rigid body, then take one of these, duplicate it, and remove its rigid body. And then I can use these. I'm going to bring them down here, get them on the level of the tiles. And then maybe our game requires us to place these on these tiles for some reason. I don't know the rules of this game. Maybe you do. Right? All right, so I think one more thing I want to add is actually what we did with geometry nodes the other day. I think I want a pile of tiles next to this. So I'm gonna add a dummy object here. We'll just make it a cube. And I'm going to add a geometry nodes to it. then to that, I'm going to add a line primitive. And our tiles, if I remember correctly, well, I don't remember, they were 1.5 millimeters thick. So the offset on our line is going to be 1.5 millimeters. It looks like... Oh, I'm going to apply scale. There we go. That's what we need to do. Yeah, I'm live. Kind of felt like doing something a little different tonight. So this is going to be the center line for our pile. I'll go ahead and add a point instance node here. And I'm going to instance our stack of tiles. Of course, I can change this here. And just as we were doing in the video on the paper stack, I want to move around the positions a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an attribute randomize node. It's going to add to the position. And we want a vector. And we'll start out with 0. And so we'll want just a tiny bit. Let's do 0.5 maybe? No. Negative 0.05. And negative 0.05. And then positive 0.05. And positive 0.05. That might be too much. Yeah, that's too much. So we're just going to add a 2 in there. That's still way too much. Let's do 125. Come back. There we go. That's a little better. And we'll do the same thing with the rotation. And again, rotation is weird. It doesn't automatically come up on the line object. So we have to add it by using a point rotate node here. And then we can adjust this. And I'm just going to tweak that just a little there and there. Man, that's still just... There we go. All right. Now we've got a nice messy pile of tiles. And this is where that seed comes in. So if I've got this here and over here, since these have the same exact settings, these are actually identically random, or identically pseudo-random. However, if I change the seed value on one of them, oops, I would have to change. There we go. Now they have individual geometry node stacks. So maybe I set this one to 2. Now these have different sets of rotations in them. So we've got those, and then we will go ahead and do one more. We'll do one more of these. We'll move this here and change this object to this one. We'll do a few less. And we'll duplicate this one, put it over here. I'm just going to rotate it because I don't want to spend any more time messing with that. If you're interested in the process I took on making those random stacks there, you can check out, I've got a video on my channel just real recently that goes over the process of setting up a reusable version of that geometry node tree, and you can add it to things and do all sorts of fun stuff there. So, all right. So our fictitious game here is kind of just about ready. We're going to bring this guy's pieces over here. Let's go ahead and add a camera. Try to line this up real nice. So, let's see how that looks. Maybe something like that. We'll jump into camera settings. We'll do a little bit. Do a lower focal length, like. Let's see if it gives us a flatter view. I don't know which I like better. Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with that. And then we will do some depth of field. I will focus on that tile. Maybe, or no, I don't want the table. There we go. That, maybe bring the f-stop down a little bit. So now that makes the stuff that's closer and further away a little more blurry. Maybe frame this up a little more. Something like that. And let's see what we get. All right, I'm gonna go back in, turn on my denoising for my render. Try this again. That looks pretty good. Looks pretty good. You know, I would be interested to see if I go ahead and get rid of if I get rid of this background texture and then just add maybe an area light above this. That is a disk. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And then I'm gonna change this to a little bit warmer light, like that. Bring that up there. All right. So there we go. That looks pretty good. The focal, I don't know if the focal length's messing me up a little bit. I don't know if I like that. I'm gonna drop that down. We're gonna do let's do 25 millimeter and bring in like this maybe. Maybe on this table. And of course, this is where it all gets kind of, you know, you get picky. Hey, Zybrin, Blender Pete, good morning to you. Or good evening on my end of the scale. It's 10 to midnight here. So I am just trying to get this puppy into pull this thing into the station here. Good morning. So yeah, there you have it. There's our fake board game. I think if I went back through it, I would probably make some of the pieces a little thicker. I'm not sure. Something's bugging me about it. I don't know, maybe the table. Do that like that. Everything seems a little squashed. I don't know what my deal is. But that's okay. I think it's also getting late here. And I'm going to be picky. Use the GeoNodes method you showed the paper. Yeah. Yep, I sure did. I did a really quick and dirty version of it. But yeah, this was a perfect way to use that. It really is a great little method. I'm I'm really quite pleased with myself on that one, to be quite honest. These and these. I'm gonna grab all of those. Those a little taller. Like so. Maybe I got too much depth of field. Maybe that's messing with me. It almost looks more like a tilt shift photography than anything else. It's less of quick and easy. For some reason, I can never get hang of particles. Yeah, and you know, particle nodes were actually starting to come into we're gonna come into Blender right at the beginning of the new Sprite Fright open movie that they're doing, and I think they decided that some of the needs for this new open movie revolved around being able to do like set dressing. So like, oh, we need to put like rocks around this scene, but we want to do them randomly, and we need more control. And so particle nodes kind of got put aside, and geometry nodes took off instead. But I think those are still on the back burner. So being able to then, and I don't know how they're going to interface with geometry nodes, but to actually be able to do particle simulations with nodes rather than just the way the current particle sim deal is. So keep an eye out for that in a little bit. Blender Pete, yeah, the black and white chips were done just with rigid body physics. Actually, if I just back up to the first frame and play it, there you go. I love doing that. It's fun. Yeah, so this scene really, just kind of review here before we finish up for the night. We did a bunch of different things in this scene. So we did physics simulations on the chips. We did the geometry nodes stacks for these. We did a texture on, we did a shader on these little resource tubs that used the object random and a color ramp so that as we duplicated these, they would each get a different color randomly. So we didn't have to manually go and create a bunch of green and a bunch of whatever. And then we did a similar method on the tiles, where we pushed around the UV coordinates using the random object info random, and then created values that matched up with our texture map here. And so now whenever we duplicate one of these tiles, either the hex ones or the square ones, we get a random one of these 8 symbols. And really, I could go back into Inkscape and make as many of those as I wanted, and as long as I stayed on that 50 by 50 grid and adjusted the values here in the shader, like this is the columns. Yeah, absolutely. The stream will be on the channel. It takes a while for it to process, but I'm not sure how quickly it'll be available, but I will be leaving it on the channel under the live stream playlist. So yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so this top row is the columns, and the bottom row here is the rows. So yeah, if I take, say, this tile and I duplicate it, I'm going to get just one of these 8. And you can see here the UV map just sits. Oh, I just want the one. I don't want more than one. There we go. It sits over this one like that, and then the UV map for the squares is like that. And then, and yeah, so these just push around this location on the map here. So it's kind of cool, kind of fun. All right. I think that is about it for this evening. Of course, you know, you could always go in and you know, add your lighting. This lighting here kind of reminds me of late nights playing board games with friends late into the night with just one room in the light on, like one overhead light on. The rest of the house is dark, and you know, good friends and board games. So I'm actually thinking of putting together just a little library that I'd make available of like tokens and tile shapes and things like that. And if I do that, I'll put it out somewhere, and I'll post about it on the channel if you guys are interested in something like that. So I gotta get up for work tomorrow. It's midnight here in beautiful Illinois, USA. So I better get to bed. Anyhow, thanks for hanging out with me on the stream tonight. You guys are awesome. Thanks again for all of you who are watching my channel. Yeah, you better get to the office. You guys have really made my spring so far with how you've been supporting the channel and all that. So you'll be hearing more from me in the near future. I will talk to you all later. And as I always say, I hope this inspires you to make something awesome. Good night.